What if I told you that one of Hollywood's messiest, most bitter celebrity breakups didn't just end with lawyers, settlements, and public jabs, but with a finale so sudden, so eerily timed that the internet can't stop dissecting it? A twist so dramatic that some people are calling it cosmic justice, others are calling it tragedy, and a few are whispering something even darker. This is the story of Brandon Blackstock, Kelly Clarkson's ex-husband. Not just her ex, but a man who shared her life for nearly a decade, managed her career, and later became the opponent in a court battle worth millions. He was a figure that tabloids love to hate, and fans couldn't ignore the kind of celebrity-adjacent personality who always seemed to have a foot in both the entertainment world and the business side of things. But on August 7th, 2025, that all came to an end. Blackstock was gone. 48 years old, cause melanoma. That's the official line. But here's what's making this story impossible to scroll past. Less than 2 years before his death, he lost a $2.6 million judgment to Clarkson in a ruling that made headlines across the country. And just one day before his passing, Kelly herself posted an emotional, carefully worded message saying she needed to be fully present for their children because their father had been ill for the past year. Now, in the cold light of hindsight, that Instagram post feels less like a casual update and more like a final curtain call, a quiet public acknowledgement that something irreversible was about to happen. And here's where the conversation splits. One camp sees it as karma. He took money he wasn't entitled to. The universe balanced the scales. Another camp says this is pure tragedy, a family in mourning that deserves privacy. And then there's the camp that can't shake the feeling that the timing, the secrecy, and the high-stakes financial history between these two is just too much to be coincidence. Whatever side you land on, the truth is this. This story isn't just about a divorce. It's about the collision of love, money, illness, and public opinion, all playing out under the relentless glare of fame. It's about how even the most private battles can spill into the spotlight when the people involved are household names. So let's break it down, the entire timeline, the legal war that led here, the shocking end, and why the internet has turned this into one of the most divisive celebrity conversations of the year. By the time we're done, you'll have the same question everyone else does. Was this just life being unpredictable and cruel, or something that feels like it was written for a Hollywood script? The morning of August 7th, 2025, started like any other for most people coffee brewing, news headlines rolling in. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then the notifications started buzzing. First, a whisper on fan accounts, then a TMZ alert, and within minutes, it was everywhere. Brandon Blackstock, 48, dead. No build-up. No slow leak to the press, just a blunt, cold announcement. And that's what made it hit harder. Because in today's celebrity culture, we're used to the warning signs, the paparazzi catching hospital visits, the vague health updates from PR teams, the speculative headlines about taking time off. Here, nothing. Silence. And then suddenly, finality. It was only after the news broke that the cause became public. Melanoma, a form of skin cancer which sources now claim he'd been quietly fighting for over 3 years. That means the entire time he was tangled in legal battles with Kelly Clarkson, he was also dealing with a disease that was slowly killing him. That fact alone reframes the whole narrative. But the secrecy is what really has people talking. How does someone so closely tied to one of America's most famous singers manage to keep something like that almost entirely under wraps? In an industry where privacy is a luxury very few can afford, his ability to hide such a personal struggle is rare and, to some, suspicious. And then there's the date. Because on August 6th, one day before his death, Kelly Clarkson posted an Instagram update that, in retrospect, reads like a farewell. She explained that she'd be postponing her Vegas residency, not because of burnout or scheduling conflicts, but because this past year, my children's father has been ill, and she needed to be there for them. At the time, fans saw it as a heartfelt moment from a mom choosing family over fame, but when the next day's news hit, that post became something else entirely, a breadcrumb, a quiet signal that the end was near. And for conspiracy-minded followers, it was too perfectly timed to ignore. Layer on the history, the $2.6 million legal defeat less than 2 years earlier, the years of financial tension, and the fact that the illness wasn't public, and the internet had everything it needed to explode into speculation. By the afternoon of August 7th, the comment sections on social media were battlegrounds. Some celebrated, saying things like, "No more alimony for her leech ex," or "Karma's a beast." Others were disgusted, pointing out that two children, River 11 and Remington 9, had just lost their dad. And then there was the third wave. People suggesting that the timing, the settlement, and the secrecy were all connected in a way the public might never fully know. Whether you see it as fate, coincidence, or the start of a mystery, one thing is clear: the way Brandon Blackstock's story ended has given the internet endless fuel for debate, and this is just the first chapter. In the days after Brandon Blackstock's passing, a clearer picture of his final moments began to emerge, and it wasn't the Hollywood ending most people imagined. Far from the glitz of Los Angeles or the music industry events where he once mingled, Brandon spent his last months in Montana at his ranch in the small, serene town of Livingston. This was a man who had lived in the center of the spotlight by association for years, yet, in the end, chose isolation and quiet. The ranch had been a point of contention in his divorce with Clarkson, a property he fought to keep, and one she later described as a wasteful expense. But for him, it became something else entirely: a retreat. Friends and family say the ranch was his sanctuary, a place where the noise of courtrooms, lawyers, and TMZ headlines couldn't reach him. Those final weeks were spent surrounded by nature, with the jagged peaks of the Absaroka Range on the horizon and the Yellowstone River cutting through the valley. People who visited said he spent his time fishing, riding horses, and keeping things simple, a stark contrast to the chaos of his last few years. The Montana ranch was also symbolic. To some, it represented a man clinging to independence in the face of financial and personal losses. To others, it looked like a strategic escape, a way to keep distance from the public eye while he faced his illness head-on. And it's that word illness that hangs heavy over the entire narrative. Because remember, very few outside his closest circle even knew he was sick. There were no charity appearances, no awareness campaigns, no candid interviews about fighting the good fight. The only public acknowledgement came in those final hours, through Clarkson's Instagram post. Even his neighbors reportedly didn't realize how advanced his condition was. Some assumed he'd just been taking time off to recover from the stress of the legal battles. This is where the secrecy fuels the speculation. In the age of oversharing, Brandon's ability to keep a 3-year battle with melanoma hidden from the press seems almost impossible. Which makes people ask, why? Was it pride? Control over his image? Or was it because the illness, once made public, would change the perception of the court battles entirely? Whatever the reason, that choice means the public didn't get to watch the slow fade of a celebrity figure. They got the shock of a headline announcing it was over, and that, in itself, amplified the impact. The fact that Brandon Blackstock managed to keep his cancer diagnosis out of the tabloids for more than 3 years is almost unheard of in the celebrity world, especially when your ex-wife is one of the most famous singers in the country. Melanoma is aggressive. Once it advances beyond the skin, it can spread rapidly through the body, and according to those close to him, by the time Brandon's illness was discovered by doctors, it was already serious. But instead of making it public, he did something unexpected. He locked down his personal life even tighter. There were no anonymous sources feeding updates to gossip magazines, no staged paparazzi shots leaving a hospital. He skipped high-profile events entirely, something that would have been noticeable if he hadn't already withdrawn after the divorce. Even during the thick of the courtroom drama, he managed to keep his illness out of legal filings and testimonies, something his lawyers later confirmed was deliberate. Kelly Clarkson herself never publicly spoke about his condition until the day before he died. Her August 6th Instagram post was vague, careful, and respectful. She didn't say the word cancer. She didn't detail hospital stays or prognoses. She simply referred to illness and explained that she needed to step away from her Vegas residency to be with her kids. Now, some people see that as pure compassion, a woman putting her children's emotional well-being ahead of her career. Others think it was strategic, timed so that the announcement and his passing would be seen as separate events, preventing an even bigger media frenzy. Either way, the secrecy meant that when the news broke on August 7th, the shock hit harder. There was no lead up, no slow drip of sympathy posts, just a clean break between he's ill and he's gone. And here's the uncomfortable truth: that kind of announcement creates the perfect environment for conspiracy theories to thrive. Fans immediately connected the dots to his legal loss in 2023, the confidential settlement in 2024, and the fact that his illness would have been ongoing the whole time. Was it a coincidence that they settled when they did? Was it the stress of the lawsuits that worsened his condition? Or in the minds of the more suspicious, was there something about the settlement we weren't told? The internet doesn't need much to start filling in the blanks, and in this case, the blanks are massive. What the public knows for certain could fit on a sticky note. The rest? That's the dangerous, fascinating space where rumor and reality start to blur. For Kelly Clarkson, August 6, 2025, wasn't just another day on her tour calendar, it was the day she made one of the hardest public announcements of her career. Kelly's Vegas residency had been a big deal. The shows were selling out, critics were raving, and it was another jewel in the crown of a career that had already spanned decades. This wasn't just a gig, it was a statement. The girl from American Idol was still one of the most bankable voices in music. But in the Instagram post that would later feel like a prelude to tragedy, she pressed pause. No dramatic press conference, no carefully coordinated People magazine exclusive. Just a plain black and white text image, a caption, and a tone that was strikingly personal for a woman who's been relentlessly scrutinized for most of her adult life. While I normally keep my personal life private, this past year my children's father has been ill, and at this moment, I need to be fully present for them. That's it. No diagnosis, no name, no pity grab. It was the kind of statement that told you more in what it didn't say than in what it did. To her fans, it was quintessential Kelly direct, heartfelt, and fiercely protective of her kids. River Rose and Remington Alexander have been at the center of every major life decision she's made since becoming a mom. Even at the height of her messy divorce, she avoided turning them into tabloid props. This was her drawing a line in the sand. Family over everything. And here's the twist for all the bitterness between her and Brandon. This post was free of spite. No veiled jabs. No, we've had our differences undertones. Just compassion. In a way, it humanized a man who, in the public eye, had largely been reduced to the role of the ex who owes millions. Some insiders even say Kelly had been quietly coordinating with Brandon's family in the weeks leading up to his passing to make sure the kids had as much stability as possible. That meant moving schedules, canceling shows, and keeping the press out of it. For someone who lives under constant media glare, that's no small feat. Still, the internet isn't a place for nuance. The very next day, when news of his death broke, her statement was pulled apart in comment sections across social media. Some praised her for being dignified and respectful. Others accused her of softening her image in anticipation of the backlash that might come from his passing. And a small but vocal group treated the post like some kind of coded announcement, the calm before the storm. Which begs the question, was this just a mother protecting her children? Or was it also a subtle way of managing the narrative before it spiraled out of control? To understand why this story is as explosive as it is, you have to go way back to the beginning. Kelly Clarkson and Brandon Blackstock first crossed paths in 2006, when Brandon was still married to his first wife and working in the music industry as a talent manager. Their lives moved in similar circles, thanks in part to Brandon's family ties. His stepmother at the time was country legend Reba McEntire. It wasn't until 2012 that sparks flew. Kelly met Brandon again at the Super Bowl, and this time, both were single. By the end of that year, they were engaged, and in October 2013, they were married in a private ceremony in Tennessee. At first, it looked like a perfect match. She was America's sweetheart with powerhouse vocals. He was a behind-the-scenes industry guy who understood the business. But in 2017, their personal and professional lives merged when Brandon officially became Kelly's manager. That's when the seeds of their future battles were planted. Because here's the thing about mixing marriage with money, it can be messy. Brandon was not a licensed talent agent under California law, but he was still negotiating and securing high-profile deals for Kelly. From The Voice to Wayfair endorsements to Billboard Music Awards appearances, the deals were huge, and so were the commissions. For years it worked. They were a power couple, raising 2 kids and living in luxury. But behind the scenes, cracks were forming. By 2020, the marriage had collapsed, and the divorce filings turned ugly fast. Kelly accused him of overstepping legal boundaries in his management role. He countered with financial demands that raised eyebrows even in Hollywood. The court battles that followed were brutal. In November 2023, the California Labor Commission ruled in Kelly's favor, ordering Brandon to pay back $2.6 million in commissions he'd collected illegally. It was a rare and public rebuke that essentially said, "You crossed the line, and now you're paying for it." That judgment, combined with the emotional fallout of their divorce, cemented Brandon in the public's mind as the villain in Kelly Clarkson's story. And that's why, when the news of his death broke, the reactions weren't unanimous grief. For some, it felt like the final chapter in a saga where they'd already chosen sides. But as with any story this complicated, the truth isn't that simple. And the deeper you dig, the more you realize that the legal battles, the illness, and the way it all ended are tangled in ways that don't fit neatly into a hero versus villain narrative. For all the noise online, all the memes, all the karma comments, and conspiracy theories, there's one unshakable reality that cuts through the chaos. 2 children just lost their father. River Rose, now 11, and Remington Alexander, 9, have grown up with their parents' divorce splashed across headlines. They've lived through years of legal filings, custody agreements, and, thanks to the internet, a constant stream of public opinion about the people they love most. And now, they're facing something no child should have, to grieving a parent while strangers debate whether that parent deserved it. This is where the line between celebrity gossip and real life gets dangerously blurred. It's easy to forget that behind the hashtags and hot takes, there's a family figuring out how to move forward. Clarkson, no stranger to public scrutiny, is now a single parent in a far more permanent sense. Whatever issues existed between her and Brandon, her role now is to protect her kids from the tidal wave of commentary that has already started. And the tidal wave is brutal. On one end, fans are flooding her posts with love and prayers, praising her for putting family first. On the other, people are openly celebrating Brandon's death, framing it as justice for the financial wrongs of the past. Then there's the murky middle, those who feel uneasy about the timing, connecting dots that may not even belong in the same picture. It's a stark reminder of how celebrity culture can warp our sense of empathy. In most cases, when someone dies from a long-term illness, the response is compassion. But throw in fame, a high-profile divorce, and millions of dollars at stake, and suddenly death becomes entertainment, something to be dissected, memed, and argued over. That's the broader impact here. Not just the loss of a life, but the way that loss has been consumed, repackaged, and weaponized by people who've never met the man. And that raises a question few are willing to ask. When does our curiosity cross the line into cruelty? The morning after Brandon's death was confirmed, social media looked less like a space for condolences and more like a battleground. On Instagram, Kelly's comment section was split into factions. The first were the supporters' fans telling her to stay strong, reassuring her that she was doing the right thing for her kids. The second were the critics, dragging up old court documents and using his death as proof that karma had come knocking. The third were the truth seekers, sharing timelines and piecing together theories like amateur detectives. TikTok lit up with side-by-side videos, clips of Kelly performing on The Voice, paired with headlines about the $2.6 million judgment, followed by screenshots of Brandon's obituary. Some were played for laughs, others had an ominous, almost accusatory tone. The captions ranged from "the timing though" to "Hollywood always wins." Twitter, or X, depending on who you ask, was even more chaotic. Memes started circulating within hours, many of them darkly comedic. A popular one showed Kelly holding a microphone with the caption, "Since you've been gone, so has the alimony." Others were far more vicious, crossing into territory that had even some of Kelly's critics saying, "Okay, that's too far." And then came the long threads, the ones that pull every public record, every interview, every rumor into a single scrolling wall of evidence. Some claimed the confidential settlement in May 2024 was directly tied to his declining health, painting it as a final truce before the inevitable. Others took a more conspiratorial turn, hinting at hidden deals, insurance payouts, and Hollywood-style cleanups. But here's the thing about internet war zones. They're loud, messy, and impossible to control. Once a narrative takes hold, it can morph into something entirely disconnected from reality. And in this case, the narrative that's gaining the most traction isn't the quiet story of a man who died after a long illness, it's the sensational one, where timing and money blur into a headline that just won't go away. If you thought the memes were intense, the conspiracy theories swirling around Brandon Blackstock's death make them look tame. For starters, there's the settlement timing. In May 2024, both sides abruptly dropped all legal action. No leaks, no sources close to the matter spilling details, just a sealed, confidential agreement. For over a year, nobody outside the inner circle knew why until now, when people are connecting the dots to Brandon's illness. Some believe it was a gesture of mercy from Kelly. If Brandon's health was declining, maybe they both wanted to stop fighting and focus on their kids. Others, however, spin it differently, that the settlement was a way to lock in terms while he was still alive, ensuring assets and obligations were clearly divided before the end. Then there's the Hollywood angle, the idea that in the entertainment industry, nothing happens without strategy. The whispers say maybe the public didn't know about the cancer because it would shift sympathy toward him during the legal battle. If juries and judges see a dying man in court, the optics change. Was keeping it private a legal strategy, a PR move, or simply a personal choice? And of course, there's the small but loud group going full true crime mode, suggesting there's more to the cause of death than reported. They point to the way the story was rolled out Clarkson's statement one day, the death announcement the next, the cause revealed after. To them, it feels choreographed. The truth is, without hard evidence, these theories live in the realm of speculation. But that's where the internet thrives. The less people know, the more they fill in the gaps, and in a story where money, fame, and illness intersect, those gaps feel like they could hide anything. When you strip away the noise, the lawsuits, the $2.6 million judgment, the settlement, the secrecy, the conspiracy threads, what's left is a human story. It's about two people who once loved each other, who built a family together, and who later became adversaries in a very public way. It's about illness striking quietly in the background while the world watched a completely different battle play out. It's about children caught in the middle of a narrative they didn't choose. Kelly Clarkson is now raising River and Remington without their father. Brandon Blackstock's name, in the public eye, is forever tied to controversy, but in private, he was someone's son, someone's friend, and the father of two kids who will now grow up with questions only he could answer. Was the timing of his death suspicious? Or was it simply one of life's cruel coincidences? We may never know the full story, and maybe we shouldn't, but what we can take from it is this. Was the timing of his death suspicious? Or was it simply one of life's cruel coincidences? We may never know the full story, and maybe we shouldn't, but what we can take from it is this. Celebrity drama may make for clickable headlines, but behind everyone is a reality that's far messier, far more painful, and far less entertaining than the internet makes it seem. So, what do you think? Is this a case of karma, coincidence, or just a heartbreaking end to a complicated story? Drop your thoughts below, but maybe, just maybe, let's remember there are two kids reading those comments.